Throughout my life I've been tempted and tried to find something that quiets my heart. But no matter where I run, I find that the only one who quiets this heart is you. Reveal to me what I've known all along. And this love so amazing, I've never known something so sweet. And this peace overtaking, I finally know that I am set free. You satisfy me. With hands that made day and night, darkness and brightest light, you mended this hole inside me.
And with those same hands you came to sinners and all the saints, freeing us with holes in your hands. Oh, this love so amazing, I've never known something so sweet. And this peace overtaking, I finally know that I am set free. You satisfy me. You satisfy me. My heart, it cries to you. My mind, it thinks only of you. My soul, it longs for you. My strength belongs only to you.
My heart, it cries to you. My mind, it thinks only of you. My soul, it longs for you. My strength belongs to you.
This love so amazing, I've never known something so sweet. And this peace overtaking, I finally know that I am set free. And this love so amazing, I've never known something so sweet. And this peace overtaking, I finally know that I am set free. You satisfy me. You satisfy me. You satisfy me. You satisfy me.
Who doesn't want to be rich? It's a rhetorical question, not really meant for you to answer out loud, because there's surely someone who, thinking the right response is to denounce all wealth, will shout, "No, I would never want to be rich." Everybody around that person looks away and shakes their head in disbelief. Most of us will admit it, though. I mean, I will. Given the choice, all other things being equal, I would love to be rich. In fact, I've kind of pretended to be rich a few times. For Valentine's Day in 2013, I did something extravagant, something I'd never done before. I took Susan on a surprise Valentine's Day trip to the Ritz-Carlton in Washington, D.C. I had saved for months. It was something that she was never going to guess because we just don't blow money like that. I mean, for us, a normal upgrade would mean staying at the Holiday Inn. Woohoo! So 2 nights in an extremely lavish 5-star hotel, the Ritz-Carlton, mind-blowing. We stayed club level, something else I'd never done before. There was food out all night long in the common area. And I don't mean hot dogs and soggy fruit and stale Ritz crackers. I'm talking about fresh shrimp, filet mignon kebabs, crab cakes, cheese that wasn't individually wrapped, and a chocolate fountain. So for 48 hours, we pretended to be rich people in the club. We were imposters rubbing shoulders with really wealthy folk in their designer clothes and me in my Walmart sweatpants and t-shirt. And when we got to the towering structure, when we first pulled in, I pulled up to the valet parking, and I was in my old and well-worn Honda. I parked next to somebody's Bentley. I threw the keys at the valet as if I did this every weekend. They opened the doors for us and left mints on our pillow and carried our bags up to the top floor. They called me Dr. Hughes, and so I tipped every bellhop, not $1, but $2. But that weekend came to an end, and we returned to the reality of our modest life. Still, every once in a while, I daydream about what it would be like to be rich. I'm not the only one, am I? Apparently, this is not a new fantasy. In fact, the Apostle Paul knew that even followers of Jesus weren't immune to the appeal of a lavish lifestyle. And he actually wrote for us a formula for how to get rich. All this time we've been playing the lottery or trying to figure out the stock market or reading the latest get-rich-quick book. But the answer to our secret longing has been in the pages of the Bible all along. So I came today to relay it to you. I'm going to give it to you straight from the Apostle Paul's letter to his protege Timothy. In Paul's own words, this is what he says. Are you ready? Here it is. Serving God makes us very rich if we are satisfied with what we have. Serving God makes us very rich if we are satisfied with what we have. He goes on to say, we brought nothing into the world. We can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothes, we'll be satisfied with that. Those who want to become rich bring temptation to themselves and are caught in a trap. They want many foolish and harmful things that ruin and destroy people. The love of money causes all kinds of evil. Some people have left the faith because they wanted to get more money, but they've caused themselves much sorrow. Serving God makes us rich if we're satisfied with what we have. Serving God makes us rich if we're satisfied with what we have. Not really the answer we were looking for, but probably the answer we need. Because in our quest for more, we find that we never really reach the elusive enough. And that's why Paul goes out of his way to talk about what he calls the ruinous trap that lead many faithful people to leave faith altogether. Epicurus, the great Greek philosopher, he said, "To whom little is not enough, nothing is enough." He said, "Give me a barley cake and a glass of water, and I am ready to rival Zeus for happiness." Now, someone one time asked Epicurus for the secret to happiness, and his answer went like this. He said, "Add not to a man's possessions, but take away from his desires." So if you were here 2 weeks ago, we began this conversation because the Bible speaks a lot about money. Jesus talked more about money than he did heaven and hell combined. The Bible has 2,000 verses about money because God understands the power of money in our lives. So we talked 2 weeks ago about, we used this tank as an illustration, and we talked about margin and how when you operate above the line, when you don't spend as much as you bring in, when your income exceeds your outflow, even by a little, you begin to build margin in the tank. And so we're adding slowly to it and we're building margin. But many of us, myself included, have at some point in our history not heeded Paul's warnings about the pursuit of riches and the dangers that it involves. And so you might think, well, Brian, this is really not my problem. You might say, you're wrong about me, Brian. I don't care anything about money. But that's the really brilliant thing about this trap. It's a covert conspiracy. Because we all recognize if the problem is that we've got this excessive amount above the line. Some people don't live close to the line. Like they got plenty of stuff in the tank. They got extra tanks because, they've gone way overflowing with their margin. They got more tanks holding more money until money isn't a tool that accents life, but a torment that tears them apart. If that's somebody's problem, it's kind of easy to recognize. No, the genius of this trap that Paul talks about is that it isn't on the surface about money, but about the things that money can buy. For example, who here today has one of these? If you raised your hand, no disrespect to you, but I seriously doubt that you actually have one of these. This is an iPhone, period. Not an iPhone X or a 13 or an 8. This is the original one. The one without any letters or numbers or symbols behind it. 14 years ago, in 2007, Steve Jobs unleashed the most powerful mobile device using what at the time was revolutionary touchscreen technology and a highly intuitive interaction. This phone, by the way, was 4 gigabytes. You can get a terabyte today. Oh, and the camera was 2 megapixels. The iPhone helped make Apple the single most valuable company in the world, and it remains near the top of that list, but it really wasn't the iPhone 1 that made Apple so much money. See, the brilliance of Apple's plan is that a decade and a half later, the iPhone has been replaced not once or twice or 6 times, but it has had 32 different iterations. Every year, newer and better and improved models come out, better memory, more memory, a better camera or more than one camera, better video, better software, better sound, and we just can't help ourselves. And that includes me. Every 2 years, the contract is up and a new deal is offered and a trade is made. Actually, if I'm being honest, I make myself wait an extra year now. It just makes me feel better. But as soon as the new one comes out, if I'm telling the truth, all us iPhone people, we're drooling. We want it because it's better and because we look around and everybody else has one. Now, there's nothing really sinful about that. Don't throw your iPhone out your car window on the way home from church today and blame it on me. It's okay. I'm keeping mine. The problem really isn't one upgrade or just an iPhone upgrade. The problem is that we do this with practically everything in our lives. Technology, Alexa or Google Home or Apple Watch, because we weren't already close enough to it with it sitting in our back pocket. Now we have to have it screaming at us from our wrists. But we need to know our heart rate in real time, I guess. Your Xbox, your PlayStation, Bluetooth speakers that we can hang in the shower because Lord knows how awful it is to listen to music while your phone plays it from the bathroom sink. And we have TVs that keep getting bigger. Now we have to have Sony 70-plus inch curved Ultra 4K high def. So Chris Hemsworth and Dwayne Johnson are literally larger than life in our living room. We can see the ripples from their abs from right in front of us. We have cars that drive themselves and parallel park themselves and tell you where to go, require no gas, connect to your Apple Watch. They literally do whatever we tell them to do. And we do this with everything in our lives. We upgrade and upscale and upsize all the time. And I find myself asking this critical question, when am I ever content with what I already have right now? Is there ever a moment when we're not thinking about the next thing that we want but don't yet have? This is a struggle for me too. And I think about Paul's words that serving God makes us very rich if we're satisfied with what we have. Oh, that's easy to say. It's much harder to live. What Paul is saying, though, is that you and me, we win when we pursue God with an attitude of contentment. That you actually, Paul's saying you actually get more life like that. So I would argue that given that the Bible talks so much about money and Jesus said so much about money, I would argue that contentment is really the first critical tool that we need if we're going to put money in its proper place in our lives, if we're going to make it a tool that enhances life rather than a torment that afflicts us. And as hard as it is, contentment really is in your control. So, with all due respect, stop saying you can't be content, that is. Shift your words and start saying, I want. I would really like to have, instead of I have to have it or I need it. Retrain your soul to be satisfied with the incredible blessing that God has already entrusted to you, placed in your life, because after all, truthfully, you're already rich. You don't have to have one more thing to actually be content. And we're lying to ourselves when we say that if we could just have that, it would be enough. We know it's not true. We know that's not true. So could we just debunk that lie now? And so let's say that you commit right now in this moment to shift your thinking. I know I'm not the only one who needs a little course correction from time to time in the way that I think about money. And so I'm going to assume that somebody here today is thinking, yes, this is what I need, and I'm going to be content, and I've got enough, and I'm rich already. I've made up my mind right now. If that's you, praise the Lord. Seriously, I'm glad for you. It's an important place that you needed to come to. We all need to come to that. But then many people, they have this revelation about their richness, and they come face to face with another horrifying reality, that they've already dug a hole that they don't know how to get out of. See, while 2 weeks ago we talked about margin, that is the accumulation in the tank of resources above the red line being we spend exactly what we bring in and we have nothing in the tank. The truth is that many of us have already outspent our resources and we are now below the line. And anything below this line represents debt. That is, if you're below the line, it means that you have spent at some point in time more than you had, and the only way you can do that is to borrow. And many of us have spent months and years going further and further and further below the red line. We've been spending a lot more than we made, and so the debt grew larger and larger. And the Bible gives us a real picture of what this is like. Check this out from Proverbs 22. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. I find this fascinating. In this proverb, the word rich is singular. The word poor is plural. And it's kind of telling because there really are far more people who are in bondage because of debt than there are people who are free from it. Far more borrowers who voluntarily give up certain freedom to become slaves to their lenders. Being in debt, it's not really a new thing. I mean, Solomon wrote this proverb thousands of years ago. And what that indicates is that being in debt, being a slave to the debtor, to the lender, it was happening then. but it's only really become an epidemic in the past half a century or so. 64 years ago, there was no such thing as a credit card that would be widely accepted at most retailers. But in 1958, Bank of America launched with the Bank AmeriCard, and it became the first successfully recognized modern credit card. It would later become known as Visa. 8 years later, in 1966, the ancestor of MasterCard was born to compete with the Bank AmeriCard, and the rest, as they say, is history. Except the history isn't pretty. Today, the average balance for households that have a credit card is over $6,000 in credit card debt. Student loan debt stands at $37,000 per student, and get this, student loan debt grows by $2,800 every second, adding to the $1.4 trillion we already owe for our education. Overall, the average American is $47,000 in debt. So even if we learn to be content, even if we start right now, we get our budget balanced and we don't spend any more than we make, so we're not getting any deeper in debt, we still have a problem because the borrower is still slave to the lender. And if we make the minimum payments on our debt, most of us won't climb out of debt for 30 to 40 years. In 40 years, many of us won't be here, myself included. So what do we do about this? I mean, I don't want to be a slave to the lender. How do I create margin if I'm already below the line, already drowning in debt? Well, you can. You really can. There is a way, and I'm going to show it to you. I learned this several years ago when our church was first introduced to Dave Ramsey. He teaches a tool that changed my life, and it will change yours too. Now, before I get into this, I just need to tell you, this is going to get a little technical, and there's some numbers involved, but please don't check out, because the borrower is slave to the lender, and you can be emancipated. You can be freed from the bondage. And so this technique that Dave Ramsey teaches is called debt snowballing. And it's a little complex. Just stay with me. I'll make it as simple as I can. And it goes like this. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you take your debts and you're going to list them in order, starting with the smallest debt and going to the biggest. So first thing we have is you got these three columns. You've got who you owe, the total that you owe to that bank or credit or whatever, and the minimum payment that you have to make. And you're going to list them out. And here, this is really important for all you finance types, and I was a finance major, so this bothers me to not list them necessarily in order of interest rate. It would sound like the smart thing to do is pay off the highest interest rate stuff first, but what Dave Ramsey teaches, in my opinion, is brilliant. He says you start with the least amount that you owe. You start right here. So this is the list. Let's just assume this is a hypothetical list because, you went shopping at Old Navy. You did some Christmas stuff here, and you had to have a new lawnmower. So instead of buying a push mower, you went ahead and borrowed and bought a riding mower. And who knows what you got for this Visa. That's long ago you spent that money, and you have no idea what you got for that. Same thing with the Discover. You bought a car that's now a couple of years old, and you've got student loan debt. So now we're going to start with the first one. We got Old Navy, $620. The minimum payment is $50. And here's the first part. This is really important. You got to find some money somewhere that you can allocate in addition to your minimum payments. And I'm going to assume that you can come up with $200. Maybe for you it's $100. Maybe it's more than that. But whatever it is, you got to come up with an extra payment, and that you're going to make every month. How do you do that? I don't know. You get a side hustle and do some extra work for somebody, or a second part-time job, or maybe you cut back on expenses. You cut off the satellite TV and a bunch of subscriptions, and you whatever you have to do. Dave Ramsey says you sell stuff. Sell stuff. He says sell stuff till the kids think they're next. You just keep selling. So in my illustration, I'm just going to assume we've been able to come up with an extra $200 somewhere. All right, so now instead of making a $50 payment, I'm going to make a $250 payment. I'm going to take the $50 minimum, I'm going to add $200 to it, and I'm going to pay $250 every month on Old Navy, in addition to the minimum payments I'm paying on the rest of this. I'm going to keep paying those minimums, $200 extra plus the $50 on Old Navy. Guess how long it takes me to pay this off? 3 months. I pay off Old Navy in 3 months. Now I'm going to take that $250 and I'm going to snowball it. So the debt's paid off. Now I got Lowe's. Again, I've been making the $60 minimum payment, but I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to do this $250. I'm going to take that $250. I'm going to add it to the $60. Now I'm going to pay $310 to Lowe's every month. In 6 months, I have now paid off both of these debts in 6 months. Now, I'm going to focus my attention on this Visa, which I owed $1,500 to. Minimum payment was $70, but I'm going to add $310 to it. Now I'm paying $380. Can you see how this is working? I was paying $70. Now I'm paying $380 a month on this, and we'll just keep accumulating the payment. The payment just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm celebrating at the end of each one of these. It might be a small celebration, but we're going to do something to claim victory. Every time we pay off a debt, we're going to celebrate. Make it a competition. It can be fun. It's hard at first, then it can be fun. So I'm going to pay off this in 9 months. In 9 months, the Visa is gone. Now I'm focusing on Discover. I owe $2,600 to that. I take my $50 minimum. I add it to the $380. Now I'm paying $430. And in 15 months, Discover's gone. Discover is gone. All right, now I'm going to focus on my car. I've already got a $250 payment. I add the $430. I get to $680. The car is paid off in 19 months. It's gone. And now I'm at the student loans, and I'm going to add my $110 to the $680. The total payment is $790. And get this, at a total of 27 months, this is the exciting part. If you've checked out because numbers make you want to throw up, come back. In 27 months, I have paid off all of my debt. All this debt's gone in 27 months. And here's the important part. If you just stick with the minimum payments, it will take you 7.5 years to pay off this debt. And this is the really cool part for me. In 7.5 years, you've paid off this debt, but your car is now worn out, and I need another car. My lawnmower is long since broke. I need another lawnmower. Christmas came around 2 more times. In 7.5 years, if I make the minimum payment, I've got nothing. I'm just debt-free, but I got to do it all over again. I haven't been able to build any margin. 7.5 years. But when I did the debt snowball, if I do the debt snowball, I actually pay this whole thing off in 27 months, not 7.5 years. And if I take that minimum, if I take the payments I was making, the snowball payments, and if I keep going and I carry it all the way out to 7.5 years, I pay off the debt in 27 months, and at the end of 7.5 years, I have $55,000 in the bank. Now, which do you think is better? I can finish 7.5 years making minimum payments. I have nothing to show for it, and I have to replace my car, et cetera, et cetera. Or I can finish 7.5 years with $55,000 in the bank. That's the beauty of the snowball. You do not have to be a slave to your lender. You do not have to behave like you're poor, letting the rich rule over you. You are already rich. You can do this. You can pay off your debt. You really can. And some of us have actually done it. We've actually dug our way out of slavery. No longer are we in bondage to our lenders. I lived like that for a long time. I'm not going back to that. They're ordinary folks like you and me have found our way to freedom. The writer of the book of Hebrews says it like this. He says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, though, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who've been trained by it." So I'm not suggesting to you that getting out of debt is easy or that it's pain-free. But how much more pain exists when you are enslaved to the lender into perpetuity? You can do this. You need to shift the paradigm and be content. Develop a real and balanced budget so that you live within your means and stay with it. And you need to snowball your debt. And I know this might seem overwhelming. And some might be thinking, you know, this sounds good, Brian, but you just don't understand my situation. This is just not possible. If that's you, I wanted to finish today by introducing you to my friends, Kim and Chris Creedy. Take a look.
You know, I was definitely tired of being in debt and all of our money going to our creditors. It was a real burden for us.
So when you start putting everything down on paper, you really get to see how big of a hole you're in. And for us, we had $85,500 worth of debt outside of our mortgage. It was anywhere from student loans to Lowe's to Home Depot to car debt to truck debt. If it was out there, we owed them money.
They started talking about Financial Peace University at church, and I couldn't go to the meeting, so I asked Chris to go. I send him to all the things that I can't go to, like he's been to care team meetings and taking meals to people when I can't go.
Yep.
And
I'm known as Kim's husband, not Chris. They don't know who I am, but it's okay. So yeah, I went to the church-wide meeting, and at that point it was like, all right, we got to do this. We got to see it all the way through.
it was difficult at the time because we had a cut in my hours at my previous job, so we were not making as much income, but I took some additional hours at another job, and we just did what we could to make extra money and put that money towards the next debt, and we just kept going.
I can throw fits with the best of them, and if I want something, we make this money, we deserve it. You just have to fight through that. When you first get started, it's hard. It's very, very hard. I would say a year, maybe a little bit less than a year in, which was really hard, then something clicks. From that point forward, we didn't care what anybody else was doing. We were gonna tackle this debt and be done with it.
We started with our smallest debt, and we paid that off first, and then we rolled that amount into the next debt, and we just continued on until we paid off all of our debts.
It was a day that I'll never forget. It really is freedom. I definitely feel that God has absolutely entrusted us with even more money now. I mean, we're making almost twice as much as we made when we started. I don't think that's a coincidence. Handling his money for him better.
We've helped 2 children in Tanzania go to school for a year, and we have a sponsor child in Zambia, Africa. So we can use our freedom to help others that are in greater need. People say, well, I'll always have a car loan, or I can't get out of the student loan debt. If you make that decision and you say, I'm committed and I'm gonna do this, and no matter what it takes, I'm gonna get out of debt, then you can do it.
There's 1,000 different excuses you can make. You could have half the debt we had, it could take you twice as long to pay it off. You're still gonna get the same freedom that we have. So if you wanna keep making excuses, that's fine, but you can do it. It all starts with making a decision and making a commitment. Just get started, believe in it, and it'll work.
I'm encouraging you to resist the temptation and don't go into debt this Christmas. If you're interested in the program that Kim and Chris went through, you can check that out at fpu.com. It's a game changer. It was for me. It will be for you too. And listen, so if you're wondering, well, how can we enjoy this Christmas season? Right now, you can take advantage of all kinds of free stuff happening at your campus over the next couple of weekends. Most campuses have free events coming up next weekend. All of it is available to you and to your family. You can check that out at pccwire.net or on our app. Whatever it takes, we can do this together. So let me encourage you not to try to dig out of debt in isolation. The most powerful tool we have is not just the debt snowball, but doing it in the context of community. So get around some people. Let's get over ourselves that we don't like to talk about our personal finances, and let's get some people around us that will encourage us, hold us accountable, and think about where we can be this time next year. Because the borrower is slave to the lender, but that doesn't have to be me, and it doesn't have to be you. We can be rich if we will be content with what we have and pursue God in the process. May that be true for you and me this Christmas. We'll see you next week.
Throughout my life I've been tempted and tried to find something that